Welcome back, folks. Hopefully you had a good lunch. We are your new Sutradhars for this session. And what an early morning session it has been. It was very exciting and invigorating, and hopefully you had a lot of learning like I did. Following that, I think we have a talent topic that's coming up. You want to just kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I think the next topic would be on the managing talent complexity. We talked about even last evening about this. And how do you think, what are the skills that are needed for core engineering? How do you think you can really transform the digital engineering part? What upskilling are going to be needed? And how do you think we need to prepare for decentralized remote ways of working? I think there's a lot of fascinating topic. And the speakers are Ahmed from Boeing and Nataraj Kumar from Philips and Alok Nanda from GE. I think it's a fascinating speakers and really look forward to hear them also in the second session.
So on the topic of talent, there is definitely going to be a thing that will probably pick up the thread when we come on to the next break, which is going to be D&I. I know we talked a lot about this in the previous session. It's a topic that typically I have seen people either getting super excited about, or I feel there are people who are kind of rolling their eyes. So we'll share a lot more our perspectives about D&I as folks who have responsibilities leading our organization. So I think more to come on that, and lot more interesting stuff. We'll have some exciting polls also that are going to be coming your way. So do not go anywhere. You need to take a bio break. Go quickly take a bio break because the session is starting in 30 seconds. So with that, we will send you to the main stage. Over to you guys.
I don't know whether it is supposed to be sleepy or supposed to be jovial before tea. So with that, we've been given 20 minutes, so we will have a conversation with Sangeet. It's interesting on a topic like manufacturing and hosted by NASSCOM. You will find two people representing two different kinds of, not different, two facets of the same industry. One is a service provider who serves global customers, and another startup, a successful startup from India and doing extremely well. And during our discussion prior to this chat, he was telling me an interesting point, that when he goes abroad to sell his products, right, which is the warehouse automation related products, which you will hear, he told me that he will, since he said his products are made in India, and the faith in the embedded software is much higher, and they actually believe that the software will be stable and then whatnot. That came as an extremely nice compliment to all of us here, because I come from an era where we had to go there to justify our intellect that we can also do embedded software in front of the customers. And it is to the credit of NASSCOM and many of us here that we've been able to get the image right in front of the global customers today. And it is true that most of the embedded and not only IT services but also embedded kind of a business segments comes to India today, and then we don't have to really go ahead. So that was an interesting tidbit which he shared with me, and I'm sure she can share more there. Talking about embedded in smart supply, smart is something which is much used, much flayed horse, right? So I suppose we will use it appropriately here. And when it comes to supply chain, right, I would see, for the purpose of this discussion, maybe we could see it in kind of three buckets. One is what happens within a manufacturing shop floor in the actual line, right, which is also part of the supply chain, because what you receive as a product, somebody should have manufactured it, right? So that's part of the supply chain. Another is all the movement of materials, goods and materials, which happens within the manufacturing plant. And we have been through many stories of how this movement itself is a bottleneck to ease the supply chain situations. And the third aspect of supply chain is what happens outside the manufacturing floor when it comes to distribution and all of that, right? So these are the three buckets. This is being made only for the purpose of this discussion. So I'll share maybe a few nuggets from my own experience, and then before we get onto a chat, right, if you are okay, right, Sangeet, right? I come from a manufacturing kind of a background, and then a couple of projects in that, especially the building of the smart. Now, you know that about 70-80% of the industry needs motorized equipment for automation, and motor failure is a major element of failure within the manufacturing plants. So we did an exercise where we did a low cost vibration measurement kind of an equipment, along with temperature and all the other parameters, which could be a retrofit into the automation line of our customers. And this was what started as a pilot plant in one plant, right, in an auto manufacturing unit, to connect to various motors within the manufacturing plant. That plant had both vertical movement of the materials as well as horizontal movement of materials, and then this started as a pilot. Now, when you talk about pilots and IoT, etc., I am sure a lot of you will have dry smiles, because how many of them pilots get into real implementation is everybody has gone through that pains, right? But pilots are a necessary evil, are part of life in any case. So this particular project went on to be established for about 40-60 plants around the world, and it was a very good experience for all of us to bring the smartness in terms of marrying the mechanical aspects which are happening on the floor, and to do near real time processing within the embedded system through a gateway, and of course do all the nice little things on the portal to get to know for the management and others, etc. This was about 2-3 years back. But then this needed vibration and other sensors to be put on to the motor, retrofitted, and that was always difficult. And then when we were discussing with another semiconductor manufacturer, that manufacturer said, why don't we put this intelligence, right, on the current and voltage measurements, current and voltage which kind of feed into the motors, and look at their signatures and then come to any conclusions. So we worked with that semiconductor manufacturer to do the microcoding of the firmware, and then this is released as a firmware package along with the SoC, and then now this is getting implemented in various parts of the world as a ready-made solution from this semiconductor manufacturer, right? Now this particular thing has no retrofit, there is no need for any other external sensor. It measures all of the good things by reading the signatures of the current and voltage. Now in the IoT world, you will see that there are new sensors required, and we have been talking about it for a long time now. But there are also other methods by using currently available sensors, what more you can do, right? For example, in this particular case, we implemented embedded AI, where the inference was supposed to happen within 5 milliseconds, right? The modeling could happen a little time, but inferencing should happen within 5 milliseconds. So we had a hard real-time objective in front of us, right? So these are a couple of examples of where both the retrofit kind of a mechanism can be put, as well as things which can be done at a much lower level, right? Much closer to the semiconductor and things like that. So, and there are several examples like this. I will not bore you, right, with global examples like this. And it is not only in globally, but even in India as well, right? I mean, some of our plants, traditional, thing tells us that Indian manufacturing sector is a little behind when it comes to automation, etc., etc. Trust me, it is not the case, right? I have visited many plants in Europe and US who are for want of any word, as backward as any other, right, in the developing world. And in India, we have far better automated factories as anywhere in the world. So both sides kind of coexist, right, in terms of our experience here as well as India. So this is kind of within the plant. Now, if I can request Sangeet to talk about his experience of implementing automation in warehousing and within the plant, I think we'll take it from there.
Yeah, and thank you, Shashi. And you spoke about factories in India which are more advanced or much more advanced than any other factory in the world, and I come from one of them. I used to work for Asian Paints, and they used to build world's largest and most automated factory right from 2008 onwards, and every 4 years they have built one factory which was larger and more automated. I was associated with few of these factories, and what we realized in warehousing world, so any kind of forecasting and forecasting for country like India, it is very, very difficult, and whatever optimization engine you use, there is a limitation, and any forecasting engine, what it was giving it to us, and we were using the best, was 80% and 85%. So what used to happen is, from these large factories of ours, we used to distribute, or there was a lot of maldistribution of the products. So selling was happening here, we used to send here because the forecast was like that, and then we had to transfer from here to there. So what we did was we said, okay, we will avoid this maldistribution, and therefore we will delay the distribution. So there will be forecast. We will start committing our products according to the forecast, but we will see the response of sale, and therefore we will be responsive in meeting those requirements. And that meant that I had to keep larger inventory in the factory. That also meant that I had to be very, very responsive. That also meant that in factories, we had this philosophy that everything will go to the depots, it has to go full pallet. So one SKU, one pallet, etc. So we had to put more, so mixed pallet. So in one pallet, you had to have 10 SKUs, 12 SKUs, according to the requirement of the depot, which was incremental in nature. So these three basic problems, it had to be solved. There was only one way of doing it, and that was automation, and which is what Asian Paints did from 2008 onwards. And the supply chain of Asian Paints has been respected because of that. So we became more responsive. Because we had to store more inventory, so we did not, we started talking about cubic feet, not square feet, because of the limited area. And if humans can reach 2.5 meter, humans with forklift can reach 10 meter. But if you have to go beyond 20 meter, 30 meter, you need a different kind of automation. Similarly, when you need mixed pallet formation, and that too, when the truck, you have to dispatch 200, 300 trucks a day. And if mixed pallet formation has to happen at that speed, you need different kinds of robots to do that, because these are 30 kg buckets and 40 kg buckets. So this was one experience, and at that time we used to buy heavily from all over the world, mostly European and Japanese companies. And that is when I decided, okay, something needs to change, and we need to build these products in India, and we started Addverb. Yeah, so this is about my experience inside the factory as far as warehouse is concerned.
It's interesting that the word Addverb, right? I thought it is an advertising company, right? Before we got into the details of it. But you know, you have grown quickly, and then you were telling me saying that it's almost 1,000 crore kind of a company, right? But you also do multiple weightages, right? All the way from few kgs to the tons, right? So you can give a little sense of what kind of markets you deal with, and then how do you?
Yeah, so we build robots from 6 kg to 2000 kg payload capacity. We do the electromechanical equipment, we do the embedded system, we do the embedded software, we do the high-end software. And today robots are 50%, 60% software, and rest 50, 60% value addition is electromechanical equipment. So, we have been successful in India, and now we have 100% subsidiary in US, Europe, Australia and Singapore, and we have been able to sell our robots in each of these markets. So yeah, we are doing that very well. One thing, Shashi, the kind of experience which you have in factories and IoT world, how are the advancements in these IoT devices or sensors or embedded devices helping the next gen supply chain or the digital supply chain that we talk of?
I'll probably give you a couple of examples. One was with a packaging material manufacturer. Right? Now you know that you are responsible for packaging, and then you will have to get it back from the packaging, trace the packaging, etc., etc. is a thing. Now, since we do mechanical design and electronics, etc., so there were a lot of packaging manufacturers who come to us and then say, how do we integrate, for example, wireless, passive as well as active RFID into their packaging material, right? And that packaging material goes through several kinds of environmental issues while the product goes out, right? Some packages are neatly packed inside a thing, and then you have protection, and some other packaging material does not have any protection, right? So the challenges of embedding electronics into such packaging material, right, and being able to test it and then give it to them is one trend which is kind of happening, right? Now, so far that kind of a trend is there in high-end systems. Now, people like, for example, you can go to a high-end wine, you will have an RFID and then you can do that, etc. But as with the cars, all the high-end things will come down to low-end very quickly, and then this is likely to happen. Now, one interesting thing I want to share is that this kind of a thing, packaging material, is going down further. In fact, we had an inquiry and then we executed this for one of the plastics manufacturers who wanted to find out the material impact when you fuse electronics into his plastics, right? What is the impact of that? When you mold something, right, a plastic with the electronics there, does it tolerate, doesn't it tolerate, does it deformation, etc., etc. Because, and this plastic manufacturer is interested in a new formulation to be able to supply all the way to the end customer. In this case, FMG is a customer. So he is investing on a, shall we say, science project, right, to be able to say, Baba, does it work? So these are the trends which are happening. Many of them may sound science fiction, but we have to be involved in science fiction kind of projects as well. They only tell us what works and what doesn't work, right? And of course, you learn from that and then you actually go ahead and implement. So these are two interesting examples, right, if I may.
Great, great. In fact, I heard about this packaging material where Industry 4.0 is about batch size of 1. So you are producing it customized for that person, and that person can interact with this packaging material because there is embedded sensors in there. Yeah.
So we have 4.5 minutes to go, right? I'll just leave this thought. Maybe we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. One of the things about automation has been there in the supply chain for a long time. In fact, anytime I talk about IoT for a hardcore control instrumentation engineer, he said, we've been doing it for 30 years. What is new you are talking about? So such is the response. But having at the same time, I think directly taking the sensor output directly to the cloud without passing through all these PLC related L5 layers, etc., is also happening slowly but surely, right, in the marketplace, right? And that will add to what is called tracing back of your product all the way to the manufacturing. For example, just one example, most of the products today are connected, which means when you make a product, it is a connected product. When you have a connected product, you need to have the SIM card or SIM equivalent built into the product, which means you need to have an ID for that product, right, which will be connected later in the field. So whatever is needed to be done to create a connected product in the manufacturing floor and test it is also becoming a trend, right, within the manufacturing industry. This will help trace back and then be connected with your product today, and then hopefully tomorrow the initial version of digital twin also could happen, right? So these are some examples of how smartness and embedded smartness, right, are getting built into different projects around the world. So with that, maybe we'll take a couple of questions from the audience.
I'm Chandra, and the question is to Sangeet. You would be making different type of robots related to, you said all the way from 20 kg to 2000 kgs, right? So on the embedded software point of view, did you see any challenges because of the multiple variants, multiple models that are existing?
So there are various applications of these robots. Some are used for sortation, for picking, goods to person, movement, etc., etc. And therefore we have different embedded modules for these different robots. So we have not made it a uniform one module doing everything. Maybe in future it will happen, but because of cost considerations and application per se, which does not require that much compute or that much intelligence, we have chosen different modules and different software is running on. So per se, we have not found, we have been able to meet all the challenges and overcome the challenges and build a great product out of India.
Nitin here from Global Logic. Great session, Shashi and Sangeet. Thank you for that. You talked about this too, Shashi. You talked about IDs and more of these sensors starting to have IDs as they move to the cloud. Do you also see the speed at which that standards are coming in? I know that digital twin has got a standard from an ISO perspective, but it's not very defined yet. What are your thoughts around that?
No, standardization is far away from being done, right? Every other company wants to be a leader for digital twin. And that is that's kind of a sad thing actually. Even the definition of digital twin, there are so many, right? If you go there, of course in the industry there are several definitions. If you go to pure play digital companies like Microsoft, for example, Microsoft is just an example. I have nothing against or they have a definition of digital twin. If you go to a hardcore process company like ANSYS, for example, they have another definition for digital twin, and reality will probably somewhere in between, right? And I agree with you saying that we have some way to go, and all of this Meta also talking about digital twin is not helping the matters in any case. So I suppose all of us are guilty of creating waves in the industry, and then some waves succeed, some waves don't succeed. I suppose Meta is one such we are facing right now. Hopefully we will see. When we meet 5 years later, we will discuss further, Nitin, on that. Yeah, I just wanted to leave this thought, we always talk about products getting software heavy. With your permission, Sangeet, the proportion of software engineers within his team is a glimpse of that, right? They have about, with your permission again, they have about 700 people, engineers. 300 of them are software engineers, right? About 200 of them are mechanical engineers, and rest of them are in manufacturing, etc., right? So, and they are creating robots here today, right? So that gives a little impression about how software is becoming central, right, to the whole product industry, which finally is a physical product. With that, I will stop here, and thanks very much for your time.
That was a really interesting session. It goes to show, how digital is permeating every aspect, of the industry and our life in general. I mean, we've spoken a lot about smart factories, and this is now expanding that to, smart supply chain. And the panelists spoke great. I mean, thanks to Sangeet and Shashidhara for bringing in technologies like embedded vision and how that is being used to, create a more smart sort of supply chain, and bringing in more technologies like robotics and IoT and more different types of sensors. Overall, just bringing in more predictability in our whole supply chain, and that's the need of the hour with the kind of challenges that Karthik and I spoke in the last session that global supply chain has had with all those delays. This is the need of the hour, and I'm so excited with the kind of innovation that different companies are bringing to bear.